Welcome to part 2 of this episode's home birth story of Rosie and Noah's second child.
I remember when I was pregnant with Franny, I read Ina May's book, and there was one birth story that stood out to me, and it was this mother had said that she realized at a certain point in her labor that her mood was going to determine the mood of the room. And that, for her, it was a very important to her to keep a light touch. And I really took that to heart, and I felt that, and I was like, that's, I want to remember that, you know? And so that's why I think, like, and I mean, let's face it, I'm a performer, so, like, when I have an audience, like, I'm whatever, like, but I really enjoyed, like, making light of the moments, and I also felt like the more I can laugh through labor, the more, the easier it's going to be.
It's hard to be afraid when you're laughing.
Yeah, that's
Definitely.
true, too. And that's oxytocin, you know? Like, for me, I just felt like if I can keep everybody laughing, that makes me happy. Like, so that's only good for the end game. And so it felt like having all these people. And I remember at one point even Sarah kind of said to me, she was like, she was checking me, and we were in the bedroom, and it was just me, her, and maybe Noah and Kate. But she kind of said to me, she was like, you know, you don't have to keep cracking jokes. She was like, you can if that feels cool to you, like, but don't feel like, you know, I want you to feel
like entertain us.
Yeah, she's like, I want you to feel the freedom to move if you need to go more inner. And it's funny because that actually made me get in my head a little bit, where I was like, oh, like,
second guessing your
like, oh, my logical brain is working and I'm not, whatever. But
were you like that with Franny's labor and birth?
Yes.
Were you just like on?
Yeah.
I remember during
I
Franny's
remember
birth,
the Beyonce, which was hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, that's because Margot came to me and she was like, you know, we could go to the hospital and do the vacuum or whatever she said. And I was like, I need Beyonce.
No, you raised your finger in
God.
the air like a dictator and looked at me and said, I need Beyonce.
Like a dictator.
Yes.
Shut up.
Butt naked.
Yeah, exactly.
Walking between the two birthing rooms.
Oh my!
I need Beyonce.
I knew what I needed.
There was one point during Franny's birth where I was pretty burnt out and I didn't realize it because I was.
Happens, yeah.
And I was trying to hand her a juice box and I dropped it on the floor, and she was like,
Just put that
Just put that anywhere, like in the middle of a contraction.
I was pushing.
Yeah.
I was like pushing.
And everyone laughed, and it was like this moment of levity.
Yes, it does. It rejuvenates you when you can just smile about the insanity that it is. I mean, truly, it's insane. There's a head in your vagina.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And like there's nothing else you can do. I mean, you can do a lot of things, but like one amazing thing you can do is kind of just give in and be silly about it. But it is funny that Sarah thought that it was almost a way of like avoiding going deeper.
And I after that was ironically that was when we came out of the room and they had started filling up the tub, and that was when I needed relief. I think I was like really in a lot of discomfort, and so we got in the shower. And I feel bad for Noah because I know he was so stressed out. He must have been so stressed out at this point because he knew how badly I wanted a water birth. And we also
were using up a bunch of hot water in the shower, and I was like, oh.
Yeah. And the tub wasn't getting warm enough. So they were like boiling water, and
which is a classic home birth thing,
I knew
by
that.
the way.
And I did know that because they had to do that for for Kate's birth. She had told me or I read her story or something. So I did know that was like a possibility. So that didn't like psych me out or anything, but
And then your mom came at like 12:30.
My mom came as I was getting into the tub, So we spent some time in the shower, and I remember in the shower, I was like, I just want to do one more in here. And Noah was like, I think we need to get out. And I kept feeling like, why the fuck is he making me get out? And he was so worried about the hot water.
And it was because it was a really hot shower.
Yeah, it was. It felt so good. So
because if it runs out, like it's out here, it's like it's a tank.
It's a tank. Yeah. And
I knew we were close. Like, I think at that point, I don't know if it's because I talked to Sarah, like if I had a little sidebar with Sarah, but I knew we weren't going till 6:30 the next night. Right. I knew that baby was going to be born before Franny woke up.
Yep.
And but the funny thing is with Franny, I really wanted a water birth, and when we got to the place, I said, Margot was like, do you want to get on, I was, 7 or 8 centimeters dilated, and she was like, but one side needed to open, there was a lip or something, and so she was like, oh, that reminds me of whatever, and so she was like, what do you want to do? Do you want to do it out here? Do you want to do it in the tub? And I thought I was going to give birth in that moment, and it was like 12 hours later I actually gave birth. So we got in the tub, and so this time I was very cognizant of like, I don't want to get in the tub too soon because I got a little waterlogged with Franny, and it slowed me down. Anyway, once I did get in the tub when I was pregnant, when I was in labor this time, once I did get into the tub, I just couldn't get comfortable. And I remember kind of thinking, like, Sarah had said something like, well, there was talk about, okay, if it's not going to happen in here, and I had a lip, it was swollen from doing so many standing and on the toilet. And so that was when you had the idea to give me arnica, and I took the arnica, and I hated it.
Really?
The taste of the arnica, like I couldn't get the taste out of my mouth.
It's very sweet, but it was probably just too much.
It was just because my mouth was so hot, and it's like, and everything was cottony, and the heat was not. It was just.
What
terrible.
time did you move to the couch? Was it like?
That was right before.
Was it like 1:30?
Probably. So
you probably spent an hour in the tub.
It didn't feel like an hour, but so when we were in the tub, my mom showed up, and that was when, she kind of said, you need to, she wanted me to lay back to take the pressure off of wherever the swollen part of my cervix was, and so I couldn't, and she kept saying, relax your bottom. That's what she kept saying, relax your butt. And I was like, I can't relax my butt in this position. Like, there's no way. And there was just a moment where I was like, if I can't relax, this is going to go south. And that's when I finally was like, I think I need to get out of the tub. And she said, okay, we'll go into your room. And I immediately was like, that's not what I envisioned. I don't want to have this baby in our bedroom. Interesting. And I knew, and I thought of our bed, and we have like a memory foam mattress, and I was like, I'm just gonna sink in there. Like, it's not game time on that bed. Right.
It's marshmallow time.
Yeah. And I kept thinking, like, the vibe in the house was so beautiful, and like my mom was in the kitchen. She had her distance, but was here as a presence. Kate, nobody was on top of me. There was like room, and I just thought, there's a lot of people here, and I don't want any of them to not be here. So I said, can we do it on the couch? And there was kind of like a shuffle, and everybody had to like pull the plastic off of our bed and redo and put it on the couch and do that.
Which was a new couch, right? As well,
brand new couch. We got it right before Franny was born. And so, but it didn't even I didn't even bat an eye about the couch. I was just like, I'm not doing this in our bedroom. It just didn't feel right to me.
Yeah.
And so,
because it's interesting because, most clients who have the vision. They have this beautiful house, like you guys, and they have this beautiful view and the tub, and then they go to the smallest, darkest corner of their house to have their baby because it's like a cat would or something, you know.
Yeah.
And
like
and
cave people.
right. And it's interesting that really rang true for you. That was not where you, like, really your vision, you know, was, and that feeling of having to be in this like space that was more welcoming and open to all the people that were there who were there, that wouldn't have worked in your bedroom. And
well, and it's interesting also thinking about the end of my labor with Franny was kind of similar. I was like, no, this is communal. Like, we're gonna play Beyonce, and I'm gonna drop it like it's hot, and
Margot's gonna just watch you, and
and Margot's gonna, my harem is just gonna be on the bed watching me.
It's amazing.
But yeah, I don't know. I read The Red Tent when I was pregnant with Franny, and it really affected me. And those women birthed they were all in the room, and it's not like, you know, there were people who, it was all people for this moment. And it just felt like we should all be together when we crossed the threshold. And it was really, so we got on we got onto the couch, and that was when she wanted me to have the arnica again. And I threw up.
You and Sarah were texting.
Did she tell you all this later?
No, I saw you two texting.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Picked up on a lot. She was like, yeah, what do I, swollen cervix? And I was like, try arnica, question mark? And she was like, ooh. And then we like looked at each other, and then we put our phones away, and the arnica
love
came
that.
out.
It's funny because at the first birth.
Because there was some other remedy she said she didn't have.
That's what, yeah.
At the first birth, there were side conversations that I knew were not great.
Interesting.
Because Rosie was just exhausted after 18 hours of labor. So there were side conversations, and I'd like pull Margot aside and be like, what's going on? But you two were having that text conversation. You were like smiling. And I was like, and in my head, I was like, oh, we're good there.
Yeah.
Like,
I should have smiled every birth and doing side conversations.
But so I was on the couch.
we're going to the hospital.
Yeah, this is bad. But I'm smiling.
So once I got on the couch, though, that was when I said, oh, it was like the same progression, and this is when the moment when I knew, oh, wait, I'm about to have this baby. Because when I got on the bed when I was pregnant with Franny, 2 hours later she came.
2.5.
2.5 hours later she came. But so this time I got on the bed, and then it was like, all of a sudden I looked up and I was like, I need to eat something. Can I eat? I'm hungry. And
this happened last time with Franny?
Both.
Wow.
At about the same time.
Before
like really pushing. I was just like, I want to eat. And I remember Sarah looked up, and I think she looked at you, and the look on her face was the exact same look that Margot had. And it snapped me back to Franny's birth, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, this baby's about to come.
That is so interesting.
But Margot wouldn't let me eat at that point because I had been throwing up, and like crazy things were already happening, which weren't happening with this one.
Right.
And so she was like, yeah, do you have some blueberries? Or it was blueberries, right? And so somebody got blueberries, brought them over, and was like feeding me blueberries. And I was like eating them, and then within like...
I'm pretty sure it was me, and then you were telling me my hands were too hot.
No, that was later. Oh. It was a female giving me blueberries, I remember.
Your harem was back.
Yes,
and they're just like fanning you.
Exactly.
Feeding fruit in your mouth.
So it was moments later I threw up. And that was like, I was like, oh, this is the exact... Like, I said that I wanted to eat with Franny, and they wouldn't let me. And then, like, moments later, I threw up. And the next thing I know, I was pushing. And so I was like, oh, that look. Now this and blah, blah, blah. Wow. And so I threw up. And then Sarah's trying to give me arnica again. And I remember, in my mind, I was like, are you out of your fucking mind? Did you not see me just throw up?
Do you not know where this is going?
Yeah, I am not going to... The arnica made me throw up.
Did that give you comfort of like, oh, I know what's happening now? Or did it make you feel nervous that you knew what was happening? at that
I
point.
was so in it at this point that it wasn't until after, like 2 or 3 days after, when I was like revisiting the events in my head, that I was like, oh, those are all, like I said, the
those
placeholders.
checkpoints,
Yeah. But at that point, I remember I could not stop focusing on the temperature. And they had turned the heat way up. And I was like, why is it so hot in here? And everybody was like, because the baby's going to need it to be hot. And I kept thinking, but the fucking baby's not here yet. And I'm trying to push it out, and it's 900 degrees in here. And I was so uncomfortable because of the heat. And then, like, that's when the hot hands and I would be like, it's hot, I'm so hot, and they'd bring the washcloth over, and then like the washcloth would annoy me, so I just was like,
chuck it. Yeah.
I remember I was being so mean to everybody. I was like, this sucks.
You were.
And I remember immediately I would like, your hands are so, don't touch me, your hands are hot. I'm so sorry. Like within like, the same breath, because I was cognizant of like, I wanted to have a light touch, and here I am being that like,
oh my God,
snappy woman in labor. But I remember every time I yelled at somebody, and I don't think I was yelling, but every time was short with people,
you were pushing.
I immediately apologized.
At that point.
I was pushing at that point?
I believe so. Because you pushed for, like, what, just under an hour?
No! Sarah said I pushed for 20 minutes.
I was going to say it was very short.
Yeah, 20 minutes.
Okay.
No, the heat thing, I didn't feel temperature when I was pushing.
Okay.
But that was all like the final thing before the pushing. And so then I remember I started pushing and my water hadn't broken yet. And so it was really, there was a lot of discomfort that I don't remember with Franny. And it was, because with Franny, it's like the first time, it's like you have to get over that lip and back. And I likened it to, because I grew up in the Northeast, when your tires get stuck in the snow, you have to like
rev.
You have to like, you go forward and then you rock back, and then you have to just keep riding the rock, and you have to get the gas at the perfect moment so that you ride the rock just enough that they don't spin, that they eventually make it over the lip. Mm-hmm. And I remember, I think I had made that analogy with Kate, because we're both from cold climates, and I remember that sensation with Franny, and I didn't have that with this one. It felt very much more like I was wide open, but there was, because he was still in the sack, it was just so much pressure, like it was trying to come out in the sack.
Yeah.
And that was just really intense, especially because of his size. And so I think we all remember that fateful moment when my water did break. And it was like
popping a giant pimple. You like squirted the birth fluid like across the Chuck's pad in front of you.
That's a disgusting analogy, and for me it was more like a water balloon.
Okay.
It felt like a water balloon popped inside.
It is always shocking though when you're right by it, because you know it's happening. You can even see it happening. You can see but it's just when it happens, it's like there's this moment of shock of like, it's like being in the splash zone at like.
I felt it, and which was crazy. And I felt the like splash, and I was like, God bless America. Do you remember that?
I don't even remember that, but that's amazing.
It was she was like,
the whole.
God bless America.
The whole house erupted with laughter.
That's amazing.
And that was like, I felt so much relief. And then I felt like, okay, now I can do this work.
Yeah.
And then like probably within the next 2 pushes, he was like straight up crowning. Mm-hmm. And
do you remember when Sarah said, like, hold the place that feels like where it hurts the most?
Yes. Oh my God. Yeah.
I loved that so much.
Because when he started crowning, it was far more painful than I remembered the crowning with Franny. Mm-hmm. I remember with Franny, when she started to crown, I remember going, it burns. And I was so happy because I remembered reading all those birth stories that when it burns, this is the ring of fire. End. Mm-hmm. I was like, this is the end. But this time I was like, it didn't burn. It straight up, I don't even want to say it because I remember reading it in so many birth stories and it made me so nervous. So I am nervous for other people to hear this part of the story, but it did not feel like burning. It felt like I was ripping apart. Mm-hmm. It was really horrible, mm-hmm. and I was screaming. Mm-hmm. And I was like, it hurts so bad. And that's when Sarah said, I want you to reach down and touch where it hurts and gently put pressure. And so I put pressure on my labia because that was where it was like really painful. And I put the pressure there while I was holding, and then the next contraction came and I pushed a little more, and that's when the head came through completely, and I pulled my hand away and I felt like a huge amount of relief. And then we were just sitting in that was the moment where we were sitting in the like calm, and I was able to just breathe and rest. And I had a conversation with Sarah when I was in the tub, mm-hmm. and I had said to her, you have to stop me. They didn't stop me when I was going with when I was pushing with Franny. They didn't stop me. You need to stop me. I don't want to tear. And so at that moment, I was glad that we'd had that conversation, because we didn't really talk about it in my prenatal. And in the moment in the tub, it was great that we'd had it on the night of, because then when she did stop me, I was like, I asked her, like it felt like we were touching back, you know? And so this was definitely that moment where we were just like waiting. And
his head is out.
And his head is
waiting
out.
for the next contraction.
And so I was waiting for the next contraction, and I was like breathing and just like taking the rest and enjoying it. And then I felt him move. And immediately my whole body just like, I felt like this flutter in my heart and my like stomach, and I just was like, oh my God, baby moved. And then she was like, yeah, and she repositioned me to open my hips a little in a more open position, and she was like, baby's doing their work. And she was like, don't, and I was like, and I'm gonna want it. And she was like, don't push it, just wait for it. And then as soon as the next, and of course that joy though brought the next contraction almost immediately. And as soon as the next contraction came, I pushed the rest of him out, and that was like it. And then she held him up, and I saw immediately I saw his little wiener. And I was like, it's a boy.
I saw a scrotum.
Where's the scrotum, Lewin? Where's the scrotum? From that movie, The Lewin Davis.
Oh my God.
And then
Sarah still owes me $5 because we bet.
We did that, and she said
she said it was going to be a girl.
Really?
Yeah,
Interesting.
I think she was just being contrary. Mm-hmm. We all thought it was going to be a boy. Mm-hmm. We all knew. But
and so you were on the couch. You just had your baby boy.
Yeah.
And he's, to circle back, not what you were thinking, or not what you had that dream about, is stillbirth. Like, he's alive, he's healthy. And
and it's funny because, like, it took him a while to make noise, but I could feel him breathing. Like, I could feel him breathing, and I remember in the dream, I almost just said the video, that's how vivid this dream was of the stillbirth. I remember Margot was in the dream, and she said to me, well, talk to him, talk to your babies, and so that he knows, and I was like, oh, I have to talk to him, and then he'll start breathing. And of course, I was like gushing over him when he was on my chest. And they were like massaging. I think it was you and Sarah were like massaging the baby. Oh, I forgot the coconut oil moment. She was like with the coconut. My mom warmed up coconut oil.
Oh.
and put that, and she was massaging my perineum with the coconut oil while all that was happening.
It's nice.
The crowning and all. Yeah. But so, yeah, so then once he cried, it was like, that was like, but I don't think I was worried about the stillbirth. Like I said, once I went into labor, that, it was it was all behind me.
It's interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And then...
Was there like 100% relief, or were you still thinking about the placenta at that point?
Yeah. As soon as
that was my first thought. As soon as we knew he was healthy, I was like, I looked down and I noticed either you or Sarah gave her the shot of Pitocin in her thigh.
Immediately.
And I was like, fuck, here we go again.
But we had talked about that moment, and Sarah had said, I'm not going to take any chances. We're going to give you the shot of Pitocin immediately. We're not going to wait to see if it detaches. It's just, we're doing it.
Yeah.
And so I was prepared for that. I don't know if you... because we talked about the plan.
About it. But I got this like creeping dread feeling, and also knowing that if we were going to take an ambulance, and thinking about
the logistics of
Francesca is, if you warn her about things, she's like cool. If you spring something on her, she loses her shit.
Well, she wouldn't have come with us, but...
No, but that she would have woken up to your mom here and not us.
Or hearing these strange men come in the house and get you on a gurney.
So I was thinking about that, and then I was also thinking about Rosie, and I was thinking about how scared I was driving Francesca to the hospital, and like thinking, like I was seriously driving Francesca to the hospital thinking like, this is like the beginning of a terrible Nicholas Sparks movie where I become a single dad. Like, this is horrible.
So all this came flooding back to you post Shai's birth.
Right. And...
Oh, man.
But I was also, like, overjoyed.
Right.
And, you know, it was hitting me that I had a son because, you know, we didn't know until that moment.
Yeah.
And then when it was like how long did it take for it to come out? Like 45 minutes?
It was close to the 1 hour point.
And we were starting to... The longer it was taking, I was just like... I
feel like the placenta issue was the reason that the worry about the stillbirth disappeared in labor, because once the labor came, it felt very... like I've done this and I can do this. But the part of this that didn't happen the way that I wanted it to and that it should have was the placenta. So it was like once I went into labor, that was the only fear. And but also like Sarah got in there. She was like massaging me and like, you know, I felt like I'd already gone through the ringer, and she was like putting me through the ringer again. And she was like, and there was one moment where she had said like, I think it's detached. It's just like up on a lip or whatever. And I was like, I kind of thought like, is she bullshitting me? Because it's a mental thing. And she, after the fact, we had a conversation about it, and she said no, that she really did think that it was stuck up on, I don't know.
Sometimes like your pubic bone or just gets actually like trapped, like your cervix wants to clamp down right after the birth, and so it kind of gets like trapped there, or like just sitting in your like in the vaginal canal, like in the pocket.
Okay, so I was like, for a while she was massaging me, and then she finally was like, I feel like it's stuck. She was like, can you stand up for me and like bear down? And I was like, what do you mean bear down? And she said, you know, I want you to like squat and like bear down. And, you know, not to be a broken record, but I thought of the red tent again, because that's like how they gave birth. And so I did that. I was like standing on a Chuck's pad, and I was like bearing down, and I just remember like I was just trying to envision it just coming out of me, and I was just like, I felt spiritually and physically at the same time like I was just telling everything to just let go. And my God, when I felt that plop,
when I heard it hit when I heard it hit the Chuck's pad, I will remember that noise for the rest of my life.
I will
Isn't
remember
that
that
amazing?
noise.
Yeah, it felt like I had been holding my breath for days, and I just got to go like,
Yeah.
oh my God.
That's a really good way of putting it, because that's how I felt as well.
And it's amazing because it's like, it wasn't the birth, you know, it's like the sound of the placenta, like that was
Yeah.
what, you know, and it's amazing.
And I remember just before, like when she had me stand up, I looked up and I could see my mom, and she was like bent over the peninsula in the kitchen, and she was just like praying, and she was like not looking at me, she was just like hands together praying, and I remember thinking, if my first instinct was like an eye roll, and then my second instinct was, you know what, I'm not praying right now, so I'm glad somebody's got that covered.
Holding that space for you.
Like she's definitely doing that part, and you know what, can't hurt.
Yeah, it can't.
Certainly can't hurt, and it didn't. I think it helped. I think everything, and you know, once it fell, it was like I looked to her immediately, and she looked to me, and
I felt,
you know, it was just relief.
I felt like the birth
So
was
much
complete at that point. I was like, I know we're home. This baby doesn't have to leave this house. He's going to meet his sister in the morning. Like,
It's pretty surreal
yeah.
to be home.
Yeah. And the lights were all twinkling, and you were
yeah.
looking out at that. I remember you were like looking out that way and squatting here, and
Totally.
and all these, you know, busy but quiet women around you trying to understand and hold space, and then you do it. You surpass the thing that
Yeah.
you know seemed impossible the first time. It was in the place that you wanted, and I remember feeling that pressure for Sarah as the midwife of
I
like,
bet.
you better do this. Like this is
gotta
all
make
on
this
you, you know.
happen.
And at a certain point, and I know the feeling of wanting to be like, I'm tapping out. Like Marga, you do it now. Then she was like, Haley, do you want to try? And I was like, yeah, like just. And I was like, it's coming. And then she like put her hands back
I
down.
don't even remember that.
You don't remember that?
I remember.
Yeah.
Now that you're saying it, I kind of do.
Yeah. And I was and that was also like very redemptive like for me as well. I was like, oh God, it's like full circle that like they're the first time and then they're the second time to be like, and it came out and I was there and it was just so incredible. But you do, it's like you need a village and everyone had their roles and but it was like it really was feeling like it wasn't going to happen. Like we were hitting that 1 hour mark and it was just in the last 10 minutes that it was like it just made it right under the wire and it was shocking and incredible and it was glorious.
It was. Oh my God. That was.
I feel like we should like buy a raw steak and a Chuck's pad on his birthday and just recreate that sound every year.
Put it down.
I'm good.
Shai's like, why are we doing this? Well,
Shut up, kid.
yeah. You'll never understand.
He doesn't want to hear this story again.
He's like, the steak
Audrey,
is
stop
too
snoring.
far.
You think it's Audrey?
Audrey's snoring.
I know, but the baby's crying.
Okay.
So
Oh.
what?
So I'm
You
guessing
don't hear him?
No, I hear.
the placenta was the most memorable moment, the splat of the...
That was the most.
You're really loud.
That was the. That was the like full circle moment for me.
Yeah.
I think the most memorable moment for me was sitting while you guys were doing your work, sitting at the edge of the couch, holding him, and really getting that time with him, because
Oh, that photo of you is.
Oh, while we were repairing you, and you were in the bedroom, and you were just out here?
no,
There's a photo
when
of
you
you
were
sitting on the floor.
still dealing with the placenta and trying to do everything for the placenta,
the
I
big-
was holding him
right here, right?
right there.
He was like saying, "There's a photo
By
of
your
it.
head? Like,
It's
Yeah.
such a
That's so
stunning-
beautiful.
He
And
just like
just
looks like.
really like kind of alternating between worry about her and just like soaking in the
Elation.
magic.
Yeah.
Because the first time with Franny, it was all worry until we were home from the hospital.
Right.
It was all worry.
I feel like, yeah, and because it was our second time going through it, you can enjoy the moments in between so much more. But with her, it felt like she was born and then we were in crisis. Because that's all you remember in hindsight when it's so traumatic.
Mm-hmm.
I say traumatic, but it really wasn't that traumatic. Like, I think of other people's experiences and I'm like, okay, we had to, you know.
Yeah, but it was a shocking thing you didn't expect to your body, and that's
And it was
processed as trauma.
It was, yeah, and it was after 18 hours of doing a natural birth and getting over that hump of just absolute exhaustion. It was like, oh, and we're going to the hospital anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that sitting there with him was my one of my most memorable, and then also
Where is the monitor?
weighing him up on the table. Is he still crying?
I don't know.
Weighing him and kind of being in the bedroom because Francesca woke up, so I went into the bedroom for like 2 hours.
In labor.
No, post.
After the placenta.
And everyone
It was
like,
about a half. It was right after the placenta, or was it like a half an hour half hour after the placenta? It was like an hour and a half after the baby was born. She just woke up.
after all that noise and everything all night. 10 woke her up.
Like what?
And so I went in there and just laid down on her floor so that she would fall back asleep, which she didn't. She was just like up for like an hour.
Knowing something's happening out there.
And then Rosie's mom switched places with me so I could come back out. And you were like patched up, things were cleaned up, and we went into the bedroom to like do the vitals, and
Then
I just
you were born.
and just basking in the glow of like, we did it, we got through it, this baby's healthy, you're healthy, we're okay.
Yeah.
We don't have to go anywhere.
And it really was a glow. It was like the coziest little light in your bedroom at that time. Like the sun hadn't come up yet, and it was like this, like trying to be quiet but like giggling, and it was so sweet and magical. And then I remember leaving. That's when the sun was starting to rise, and Anna started taking photos before we left. And but it's like the best secret, that you just did this thing.
And
It is. I love that you said that. I remember leading up to the birth, a friend of mine was kind of cracking jokes and saying, so how does it work? What if somebody just like drops in and you're like having a baby, And I was like, well, nobody ever drops in anymore these days. First of all. And
on a mountain as well.
Yeah. And second of all, I just, I kind of like laughed it off. Like, well, somebody would send them away.
Right.
But it did kind of like, it felt like all of these people showed up for this ceremonious thing, and then everyone set up, and that was something that my mom had said. She was so impressed that, Sarah set up all of her shop, and she was like, it was basically like a hospital room. Like, you had all of the things, and she had everything set up, and everything was like ready and just so, and everybody came in and went to their places and built up whatever they needed, and then after everything all was said and done, everybody just folded everything back in and left. And it was like this little secret.
I think that's so nice that she was able to appreciate that, because I think, especially for grandparents, but a lot of people in general, don't really have a clear idea or understanding of like what is brought to a home birth, like what are people's roles.
Oh, she was so impressed.
That's so cool.
After the fact, she was like, that was really professional. And I'm like,
Right. It's like, you didn't hire a witchcraft, like just
right?
fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Like, a couple of towels.
I watched a couple of these on TV.
Right. And that's so nice that she got to have that. I mean, like your aunt said, is like, that was her first birth like to witness a birth.
Yeah.
And to have it be her daughter as well, and her grandson, she found out later. But, like, there's so many layers of that can be so hard to, you know, just sit calmly. And I mean, I didn't know anything about your guys' conversation, and I felt like she was so confident and
once she came
cool.
in, she was great.
Yeah.
I was really happy she was here.
Which is abnormal for a lot of moms. They're usually sobbing in the corner. And it's really distracting, and really, we always have to ask them to, like, go to another room because it's just too much.
Wow, that's really interesting.
So she was...
Kate has to tell them to get their shit together.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Which she told me.
Kate told you that?
At Francesca's birth.
She'll get your shit together?
Yeah.
Because they were loading Rosie into the car, and I was kind of having a meltdown. I was
Yeah.
like, I don't
Yeah,
know how to put her in the car seat.
Yeah.
And she was
And
like,
we were in the car, and she was like,
you need to get your
"You
shit
need to get your shit together." Like not in a very
Like a doula way, in like a really like...
Well, in hindsight, in our
friend.
conversations afterward, she was like, I felt like maybe I was a little too forceful with Noah.
That's exactly what I needed.
And then I said,
Like
no,
slaps you in the face.
sometimes he needs a good smack across.
That is so funny.
Yeah, your mom was awesome. I think, and I think a lot of it has to do with how much you talk to her about it.
Yeah.
Even if it created friction
Yeah, I remember.
beforehand.
Like, the fight was because she was like, what do you think? You talk to me like I don't know what it is to give birth. I gave birth to 3 babies. And I was like, I know, but I'm your daughter. Like,
Yeah.
And
I'm doing it differently.
and she was in a hospital bed. Like,
Right.
you know, Rosie's gonna be walking around
I
the
don't
house.
even, I mean, that aside though, for me, I just kept thinking, like, it's hard enough for me to see Franny fall. You know,
Right.
like, it's just...
Yeah, imagine if she
Watching her.
has a baby and invites you to her birth, and you will remember and probably have a very, like, oh, I get it, Mom. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
oh, absolutely.
If she wants a home birth, and you're like, are you crazy?
Yeah, that time of like coming into the bedroom and just having that time together, I think made it all worth it. And I think some people feel that comfortable in a hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Some people are
that's-
like,
yeah.
some people are like, hey, like the kid's born in the hospital and that's like their safe, clean place, and they're like, that's where I'm.
Yeah.
That's what works for me.
Their red tent is like all the nurses, and
Yeah.
that's
Totally.
their
Yeah.
vibe.
I think at the end of the day, birth is such a personal, it's the most intimate and personal event that you go through in your entire life, if you are lucky enough to go through it. And if you don't feel comfortable and safe, it is not going to go well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, you know, a lot of people, I think, wear their like home birth or their natural birth or their, you know, they wear it on their sleeve like it's like a badge of honor. But for me, hospitals freak me out. They make me anxious. They make me nervous. And that was not the environment that I thought. After all I'd read about labor and birth, it seemed like that would be the antithesis of the environment that I would want to be in under those circumstances. And so whenever like people ask me about what I did or whatever, I always preface it with, it's not for everybody. Absolutely not. Like I don't think, I think if somebody feels very nervous about that, then it is not the right choice for them. It doesn't matter how healthy they are and how healthy non-risk their pregnancy has been. They should deliver where they feel most comfortable. But for me, like, yeah. It's funny, with Franny, I remember thinking that when we left the house and went to the birth center, it felt like that was like a level up. It was like, oh, okay, we've reached a new level of the labor. And I definitely worried about that this time, thinking like, how will I know when we've leveled up? Like, how do I know when I've passed?
Right, a certain point.
Yeah.
Yeah, which, I mean...
You don't have time
No.
to think about it the second time.
And you do it yourself. Like, the moment that you got out of the tub, you know, is your moment where you're like, okay, like, this is now the new location.
Right.
You know? And that's
Totally.
the change of environment. I know it's, like, 10 feet away, but, like, it's a new scene. It means something's changing. And, but you didn't need anyone to say, like, now it's time to come to the birth center, now it's time to do that. Like, it just is like this internal clock that says, like, ding, like, move.
And everybody showed up so early to my internal clock that I was like, okay, well, when am I going to know it's real?
4 hours later when you have a baby.
Baby's out.
It was already real at the moment.
And that's a really common thing, I think, with the second time, third time, and so on, is that your mind, like, has to play catch up after the birth. Like, the amount of shock that happens, just like the look on women's faces after the birth is that, like, I was just doing this an hour ago, or like I was just putting Franny down 6 hours ago, or whatever. And you just need a lot of time, because it's like that mental part is almost delayed, because your one experience is you compare it to the the previous, which is inherently so different, but it's almost like you just have to like go over it again and again and again, because it's like it doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up the time, you know?
Yeah, and I wrote Franny's birth story in those, like, early morning feeds.
Yeah.
I did it on the notes of my iPhone. I'd be, like, nursing her.
That's incredible.
The first 2 weeks, because I was so afraid I would forget details, and I didn't want to. So I just wrote it out on my notes. And then, like, a month or so later, I went through and I read the, like, it was fragmented, and then I, like, you know, made it a cohesive, like, birth story. And with Shy, it was really, I kept being like, wait, so what time was this? Wait, that was really fast.
We had to, like, excavate my texts with
because I couldn't believe
Sarah and Kate to, like, figure it out.
I couldn't believe that so little time had passed between, like, putting Franny down and Sarah and Kate showing up.
Right, and it was like time, unbeknownst to you. It's like that's like that little magic space. It's like, how can the biggest event happen in such a little, you know, it's crazy. One more question for you guys. How do you think each birth and sort of the lessons that came up from it, if any, helped you parent that child specifically?
So,
if that makes sense.
After I had Franny, I had, I don't know when it was, but at some point when she was a newborn, I had this realization that pregnancy is like this 40-week or however many weeks, sometimes 40, sometimes 42, long event, and how you handle pregnancy informs how you will handle labor and birth. And for me, I had this realization that it's literally just all about letting go. And it was super, not finding the words that I want to say, but the fact that my placenta hung on with Franny told me very early on that I had a serious lesson in letting go, that I had to master, that I would probably never master. But the whole pregnancy, the whole labor, the birth, the placenta retaining, it's just been, you know, week after week with her, month after month with her. It's just been a practice of me trying to figure out how to let go and allow. I remember years ago when I was a waitress, I waited on these 3 women who were having dinner together, and they were having this great banter, and whenever I waited on people like that, I would interject myself into their night because their night was far more interesting than mine. And one of the women was like, she's got 2 sons and she's just the most amazing mom and blah blah. And this is far before we had decided to start having children. And I said, well, what's your secret? And she said, my job is to water them and feed them and just allow them to grow.
Wow.
And I thought that was so profound. And it's so easy once you become a mom to just want to like hold on to everything and you know, keep it precious, and it's impossible not to. But that, for me with Franny, that is 100% been an ongoing theme of just, you know, letting go and just continuing to allow her to do her thing.
That's amazing. And like, I mean, you were doing that hand motion, like coming in like that and like opening up that space, you know, like, which, I mean, happened with the birth and the placenta, like, you know, things can close down like that. And it's interesting, like, that just learning to kind of like breathe into that expansion instead of wanting to naturally like close down, because that actually feels more protective, and that actually can be the very thing that
you're far less vulnerable to just like hold it all in and keep everything close. As far as shy, I mean, it's been, for me, it's really been a balancing act between the two of them. It's a trick of time, because becoming parents and watching them grow is so exhilarating that you don't want to miss anything. And when there's only one to focus on, it's easy to not miss it. And something that keeps coming up for me is this notion of how quickly it seems to be going, far quicker. Like, I can't believe he's already 5 months old tomorrow. That's insane to me. And I think it's because it's like, I spend this time zeroing in on one child because I'm like, I just need to like focus in on them and like see where they're at and really enjoy this moment and this time in their life. Meanwhile, the other one is growing. And then I notice, oh my gosh, the other one has grown so much in that 5 minutes. And so now I need to turn my attention back to this other one. And now I can give the other one my full attention and really zero in on them. But the first one is growing, and so I've missed this time, and so all of a sudden I'm just I feel as though I'm constantly playing catch up to the moments that I'm missing, because it's, and then we circle back to the original lesson that you just need to learn to let go.
and it sounds like sit back and just like watch them both grow at the same time. And that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
What about you, Noah? If anything.
I think, like Rosie said, I'm a worrier. And I think with what happened with the birth and transferring to the hospital and everything, kind of like set me off on a path of worry. Like, it gave me a lot to worry about. And I found as I went on, like, that I just didn't really have a lot to worry about. Like that, at the time, that drive to the hospital felt like one of the worst moments of my life. And in hindsight, it really was not all that big of a deal. Like it was just, it was fine. It was fine. It turned out fine. And I think that's been the lesson of 2 years with Francesca, of like worrying is kind of a waste of energy. And so with, I mean, not that I'm still a worrier, like, not that I'll ever stop, but with Shy, there was so much less worry. So, like, with her, it was like she'd make a like weird little snort, and I'd be like, oh my God, can she breathe? You know? And with him, it's like, yeah, he can breathe. He can breathe. That's what babies sound like.
You remember you were checking her temperature like every hour.
Yeah.
The first 2 days of her life, he just kept, and the poor baby did not want her temperature taken. He was torturing her.
She was so pink.
And
She looked really
Maybe
warm.
too pink.
Margot was like, she's so healthy. She got all
She got like
cord
that
blood.
cord blood.
Yeah, exactly. She took it all.
So that's been the lesson of parenthood. I think that sort of, I almost feel like that happened so that I could look back on it and be like, well, that's a blip. It's a footnote. Like, that's not even the story of the birth of Francesca. Like, that's just a thing that happened that was kind of a really scary inconvenience. And so, yeah, that's the lesson for me, is just to worry less, and to, I guess it's to, similar, like, just to allow it all to happen.
It sounds like that, especially with Francesca, you being in the car with her. You've never been in a car with, your own daughter who was hours old, and driving to a hospital. You didn't know what was happening with Rosie, and it just, it shattered and went right to like the deepest possible fear you could ever have. And then, the same lesson is just like, okay, you did it's sort of like Britta's thing of like going down the labyrinth, and you just go deeper, and it's darker, and you have no bearings, and then you survive. And then you realize, like, oh, it's doable. And then you, like, swim back up to the surface with your baby. And there you were, like, holding your baby, going to the hospital room, and, like, however long it took to kind of process that. It, like you said, it's just like a blip. And to kind of, I think that's kind of the point of, like, having, not the point, but, like, transitioning into parents is like there has to be a break somewhere in your constitution, in your person, and then it's like, and now you're a father, like, you did that, and now you're a mother, and that's what I mean, like, everyone has it somewhere, and but it's also such a collective thing, like, that there's a red tent to that notion as well, and to not look at it as like a scary thing, but actually as like a guide to like how to relate to Francesca. Right. She may want to push the boundaries, or she may want to do things, and you just have to be like, I remember this from the moment you were born. Like, and it's so cool that you get to have like a little fortune cookie, like little message with the birth as well of your baby. But
I think with all of this, the previous, it's all so tied together. It's like everything. Each step informs the next.
Thanks for listening to Milk Trails. I'm your host and midwife, Haley Oakes. Be sure to visit midwifemilktrails.tumblr.com to access the show's notes, view photographs, or leave your comments. Stay tuned about new episodes by subscribing to the podcast on iTunes, and tell all your pregnant friends about it. We'll catch you next time.